Wind Waker's map is comprised of 49 squares with one island dotting each. This means that no matter where Link's sailing, something should always be vying for your attention just off the horizon. Many fans argue this game has the best exploration in the Zelda series, often citing this fact, and while they'd be correct to do so, that point also illustrates the fundamentally shallow understanding most have of Nintendo's overworld development process. Wind Waker Sea is designed to make you want to explore it, but it's not the sheer quantity of islands that makes the ocean feel full, it's their layout. The rest of this video will take us through Link's entire journey, pointing out each of the devs' attempts to encourage players' curiosity as they work their way through the game's primary goals. Link starts on Outset Island, plays with some pigs, takes a pirate ship cutscene to Forsaken Fortress, crawls in a barrel, and then finds himself washed ashore at Windfall Island. After purchasing a sail, the journey sets off towards its first destination, Dragon Roost Island. Immediately, we see our first hook, Pawprint Isle. It's a straight shot from Windfall to Dragon Roost. The player is all but guaranteed to stumble across this. Those that take the bait will be rewarded with a piece of heart, an early indicator that wandering leads to spoils. After conquering Dragon Roost Cavern and learning the wind-controlling melody, Wind Requiem, it's another fairly direct line to the story's next destination, Forest Haven. Given its size and striking appearance, most are likely to spot Fire Mountain in the distance, building intrigue for later. But even if not, their path should require them to swerve around Eastern Triangle Island, which subsequently lines them up perfectly to smack into Bomb Island. Then, from Forest Haven to Great Fish Isle, the ship will have to dodge South Triangle Island. If the player does so by drifting to the right, about a 50-50 chance, it's possible to run across Cyclops Reef too, but well, I think it's clear by now that Wind Waker's team doesn't rely on coincidence, so let's just mark Cyclops Reef as unnoticed for the time being. From Great Fish Isle, the next mandatory destination is back to Windfall Island, but this time our route drifts past Tingle Island, just barely grazing the shore. Afterwards, there's a long stretch from Windfall Island back to Outset Island. Blocking the path is Cyclops Reef, that island with the 50-50 discovery chance from before, so if you missed it then, you definitely found it now. Also, no matter how Link maneuvers around Cyclops Reef, his outset trajectory ensures he'll run into Stonewatcher Island too. Next, the plot takes us to 3 Triangle Islands. Technically, this section is non-linear, but most players should visit Southern Triangle Island first since it's closest, which means they'll run into Shark Island. Southern Fairy Island is also somewhat nearby this route, but that island is small and not close enough for me to argue it's meant to be found at this point. So from Southern Triangle Island, Link chooses to visit either Northern or Eastern next. If he picks Northern, he'll encounter Six Eye Reef, but regardless of his decision, when going to the remaining Triangle Island, there's a very high likelihood of spotting Eastern Fairy Island on the way. These paths converge on Tower of Gods, which, when conquered, suddenly leaves the game much more player-driven. Because of this, I'm going to continue our analysis as if the player was using a guide and always taking the optimal routes. Due to our newfound agency, you'll notice that the optional islands, quote-unquote coincidentally appearing along the main story beats, show up less frequently. Makes sense as the devs can no longer freely predict player movement. Anyway, the best option from here is to get the Ballad of Gale's Melody near Northern Triangle Island, thereby gaining the ability to fast travel. Here are all the map's warp points. Our goal is Forsaken Fortress, so we'll warp to Tingle Island. If you're wondering why we didn't warp here, it's because that warp point locks us inside the bigger Mother Island for plot-related things later. Unfortunate longer sail time, but on the plus side, coming from Tingle Island will give us an opportunity to explore the Child Island. After Forsaken Fortress, it's a lot of warping and not much of note, so I'll go quick here. Warp to Mother and Child Isles, get Elemental Arrows, warp to Dragon Roost, sail to Fire Mountain, warp to one of 2 options, sail to Ice Ring Isle, warp to Outset, sail to Headstone, do that again but with Medley, warp to Windfall, sail to Gale, do that again but with Makar. Now we sail from Outset to Diamond Steep to get the Ghost chart. This lets us track the Ghost ship, which appears at different nighttime locations depending on whatever phase the moon's in. Pause the video if you're interested in all that, but TLDR, many bring you to yet unexplored islands, but none stick optional islands in your path. Another lightning round for collecting Triforce charts. Warp to one of 3 options, sail to Private Oasis, warp to Great Fish, sail to Islet of Steel, then to Needle Rock, warp to Forest Haven, sail to Bird's Peak while maybe passing Cliff Plateau, but we'll visit there in a bit anyway, so ignore that. Warp to one of 2 options, sail to Stonewatcher, warp to Dragon Roost, sail to Overlook, warp to Outset, and warp to Tingle, get maps translated. Now for collecting the Triforce with those fancy maps. Warp to Great Fish, sail to Stonewatcher, warp to Windfall, sail to Gale, warp to Outset, warp to Forest Haven, sail to Cliff Plateau, also I told you he'd come back, warp to Southern Fairy, sail to Southern Triangle, warp to Dragon Roost, sail to 7 Star, warp to Southern Fairy, sail to Two Eye Reef, and with that, the Triforce is done. Now we just warp to Tower of the Gods, fight Ganon, roll credits. Wow. So as you just saw, once the player is given freedom to explore wherever they like, things get a little crazy and the devs couldn't really line Link's path with consistent optional goodies. Despite that, even only going through the story, most players should encounter at minimum 32 islands, about 65% of what's in the game, with up to 4 other islands being somewhat probable depending on the order they visit the Triangle Islands as well as the ghost ship's position. Remember, this is with absolutely 0 attempts at exploration, exclusively following the main path. Our numbers don't even take into account other eye-catchers like lookout towers and whirlpools. Wind Waker's map design is brilliant, laid out in such a way that it always teases new places to admire and examine. That's the reason you're compelled to explore it. Thanks for watching.